that Chairperson Mbuyiseli Madlanga wants to have a word with all sides in relation to this matter. You can see they're all standing by the door. That's where usually the commissioners are standing by to be brought back into the room. The doors are now closed. But again, to the point I was making, Michelle, it started off with Chaskelson and Rafiq Bana, where Chaskelson basically said, this is not where you're supposed to be seated, and, please, can you move? And then Rafiq Bana, Advocate Rafiq Bana, saying, well, we're not going to be treated in the way that we are being treated by this Commission of Inquiry. It's almost a similar thread that we've seen even in the Commission papers, to be quite frank, insofar as how they believe that this Commission has been heavy-handed. In fact, it's something that was raised by Sesi Baloy, one of the commissioners, to say, where's the evidence of this heavy-handedness? Because it's par for the course insofar as the proceedings and the procedures of this Commission are concerned. In fact, at some stage, I saw a spokesperson, Jeremy Michaels, having to almost stand and ask them to just calm down a little bit, and then Matthew Chaskelson moved to the side. Then Suleiman Carrim's lawyers moved to that particular corner. I'm not quite sure what set off that particular exchange between Advocate Camille Premad and Dr. Nolita Vukoza, but you would have heard Premad speaking about how you exercise power with responsibility, if I heard him correctly, and Dr. Vukoza saying, well, now all the TV cameras haven't been able to get to see what is taking place, but certainly unprecedented. We've never seen this kind of exchanges. There's usually high levels of collegiality between the legal teams insofar as this Commission is concerned.
High levels of collegiality, of decorum, I dare say, is what the Madlanga Commission has been known for over these past months, Ziyanda, along with its incredible timekeeping of the events of the Commission and witnesses testifying. Just given how Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga has also managed the Commission in his role as chairperson of the inquiry, I get the sense that this kind of treatment of his own legal team, his own staff at the Commission, whatever the reasons might be, and certainly for all of the news cameras to see, is something that Justice Madlanga will not be tolerating, and I'm sure we'll get some clarity once the Commission resumes after that meeting behind closed doors there behind you.
Absolutely. I mean, Michelle, that kind of tension and debate, and I wouldn't even say debate because there was actually tempers flaring. That's usually something that you'd anticipate to take place in chambers, or as it's happening right now, behind closed doors. So to have the Commission Secretary and the lawyer representing a witness who's yet to take the stand, going at each other in this way, in particular, exchanging some very strong words with each other, is something that's quite unprecedented, and we happen to have gotten that live. And as I'm saying, because I was still live with you, I'm not sure what exactly triggered that, but it seems to me that the first row that, Carrim's lawyers were now seated at were asked to move to the row behind, and it seemed to have now triggered off that particular exchange. I mean, one wonders why this would be such a big issue. Sure, it's a bit annoying, maybe just an irritation at best to be moved around, because there's, like I said, there's big files and chunky things to be moved around. But the whole point of the adjournment is so that this musical chairs can be, concluded, and to ensure that everybody's seated in the right place and that everyone is ready before now the witness is brought into the room and proceedings resume. So it just tells you, the nature of the tensions and how, I mean, one can say safely that Carrim's lawyers believe, probably quite deeply and intensely, that this Commission has not been treating them well, and that they've actually, had there's been a heavy-handed approach insofar as how they've been treated. Like I said, this is not something, perhaps insofar as this approach is concerned, that is being raised now. It was raised in Carrim's witness statement, and the issue of language, of being gratuitous and sensationalist was raised, and this heavy-handedness that was consistently spoken of. And so clearly this is an extension of exactly that. So we see some people walking in. I see some smiles from Advocate Rafiq Bana. I'm just trying to peek. Okay, that's Rafiq Bana representing Carrim. And to my left, okay, these are some of the other members of Carrim's legal team, as my colleague Lesego tries to zoom in and show you exactly what is happening here. And hopefully that the chairperson has been able to bring some semblance of peace and collegiality. There's Dr. Nolita Vuguza walking right back in, and other members of Suleiman Carrim's team. There is Advocate Camille Premed. The doors are closing, and perhaps then we can finally see a start to proceedings. We did stand down at around 10 o'clock. One assumed it was going to be a quick adjournment, Michelle. It's usually a quick turnaround time to bring the witness back into the room. And so now I can also see Adila Hassim standing at the door. And so it looks like there's been some kind of conclusion or finality to this particular tension. And there's Jeremy Michaels. I think he's just scoping the room to see if we are ready to begin with today's proceedings, but at least smiles coming from both sides, unlike what we saw a few moments ago. And so this is where things stand at this point, Michelle.
Still no sign of the witness, though, Zianda, am I mistaken?
Not at all. So still no sign of Suleiman Carrim. We're hoping perhaps any moment now. I'm looking at Jeremy Michaels to see if he can give me a hint of when Suleiman Carrim is going to walk into the room. You won't see him now, but he can see that I'm live with you, standing with Adila Hassim and Matthew Chaskelson. So we're in the hands of the Commission of Inquiry. I see Adila Hassim putting some files on the desk. Also not something we also see often, one of the evidence leaders actually going to the desk of the witness. There's usually a junior that assists with those kind of logistics, if I could put it that way. So, Michelle, on standby really any moment now, waiting for proceedings to get underway, but no sign of the witness, Suleiman Carrim. His application to have his testimony in camera has been denied by this commission. The reasons will be given to them just before tea. The chairperson telling us that he didn't have enough time to cross all the dots and I's insofar as the reasons for denying that application are concerned. Walking over, and this is where things stand, but certainly unprecedented levels of drama are taking place at this Commission of Inquiry. Yeah,
in the words of Commissioner Khumalo, there's no need for all this drama. I can only think that Premed is at the desk of the evidence leaders there, Advocate Adila Hassim, SC, Matthew Chaskelson, SC, sort of smoothing things over. The bottom line is, Zianda, you've got to have a thick skin in a situation like this. Perhaps not so easy when you've spent the entire Friday arguing on behalf of your client, only for that application for his evidence to be heard in camera to be rejected, to be refused, and then to be moved from one desk to another desk. But yeah, this is how it goes.
It's par for the course, though, Michelle. I mean, that's part of what happens. You make an argument. It's not guaranteed that your application or your plea will go in your favor. So, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's it justifies the level of tempers flaring. But again, then it just shows us how what the sentiment is, at least from Suleiman Carrim and his team, insofar as how they believe they've been treated by the Commission of Inquiry. If you go back to Friday, some of the arguments made by Premier, even in terms of documentation that was outstanding, and I remember the chairperson telling Adila Hassim that come hell or high water, those outstanding documents must be given to Suleiman Carrim's lawyers, but also issues around deadlines. But these are logistical things. These are behind-the-scenes issues, Michelle, that shouldn't necessarily also create an impression of heavy-handedness, and I think that's why, Commissioner Ceci Baloy was insisting on trying to understand the reason for the kinds of, strong language that was coming through in the papers of Suleiman Carrim, because she was also making the same points to say everything that the Commission has asked of Suleiman Carrim's lawyers is exactly what they would have asked of any of the legal teams that have appeared before this Commission of Inquiry. Perhaps then it tells us of just the kind of testimony that we might be getting from Suleiman Carrim and the kinds of sentiments that he might be having around his, as we've heard, his personal safety, but what he is going to be asked by this Commission of Inquiry. Remember, Michelle, that sometimes we may have an idea of what we've heard from other, witnesses and testimony, but sometimes the Commission has its own information that it puts forward that is also new to us listening here in the public gallery and, of course, for all South Africans. And so it's always, is it WhatsApp messages, transactions, who said what about who. Those things really matter at this Commission of Inquiry, because this commission has also proven that it's got very real consequences attached to it. We have a special investigations task team that has now been activated. We know that task team is going to report directly to the National Commissioner, who will then also give reports alongside the acting police Minister Feroz Kachalia directly to President Cyril Ramaphosa. So the consequences are very real, Michelle, and perhaps then just tells us about what might be coming as we still anticipate starting. It's been more than 45 minutes since we last actually crossed, and so I wonder what's now happening behind closed doors with the commissioners, because I did see the chairperson peeking through the door earlier on, and we'll probably be hearing something regarding what exactly just took place here and how to deal with it going forward.
Zianda, I think, shall we try and keep our conversation going so that we can actually see the commissioners walking in there? And perhaps now is a good time, I suppose as good a time as any, as the deadline for the commission approaches. What's it, the 16th, 17th of March? Give us a sense of what we know about an extension, because surely there must be one.
So I did reach out to the presidency last week to say, well, can we anticipate anything, how soon? Because this is the last full week of public hearings at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. The 16th of March, next Monday, would be the last public hearing if there is no extension. So between now, Monday, the 9th of March, until next Monday, the 16th of March, we are hoping, because it's only the president who has the power to extend the tenure of this Commission of Inquiry. Of course, this would take place in discussion with the Justice Department as well as the commissioners to assess, just how much work still needs to be done. We're still in phase 2, Michelle. We still have to, just like our colleague Zolega Kodashe was reporting, bring back some of the initial witnesses, like Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. We've not heard from the Inspector General of Intelligence, for an example. Okay, and there is Suleiman Carrim walking into the room as I just move away. He is now in the room, which then signals to us that we are edging ever so closely towards the start of that testimony. As I said, that kind of tension is beginning to tell us perhaps about how explosive, or maybe not, the testimony of Suleiman Carrim is concerned. Given how you'll recall, Michelle, he first went to court on an urgent basis to not appear before this commission. He lost that bid. Then he did appear before the commission briefly and then pushed for a postponement application, which was then granted to him so that he can appear today and tomorrow. Then on Friday, there was now that application to have his testimony be delivered in camera, which was denied. So at least 3 instances one can note of Suleiman Carrim not really wanting the public seemingly to know what he has to say in relation to the allegations against him. And so to return now to your point regarding the issue of the extension, there's only about a week left, Michelle, for the presidency to do so. And as I said, the person I spoke to at the presidency says an announcement will be made soon. That is the direct quotation that I can give you at this particular point in time. What that means is something else altogether, but also how much time does this commission now need with all the scheduling challenges that have been faced? We haven't heard from the retired Hawks head, Godfrey Labia, for an example. I mentioned the Inspector General of Intelligence, Senzo Mkhunu is yet to return, Shedrick Sibia is yet to return. There's so many people who still form part of this integral thread. Brown Mahotsi now also has to return after Matthew Chaskelson told us that there are new issues that need to be canvassed with him. We haven't heard from the head of IDAC, Andrea Johnson, who was also part of the testimony given by Mkhwanazi and Crime Intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo. These are just some of the names that immediately come to mind that need to form part of this phase 2 before we get to phase 3 now, where those who would have led the allegations return to this commission of inquiry to close off. But bearing in mind that there's still many other people on the sidelines who have also written to the commission of inquiry seeking to come and have their voices heard. And I see Jeremy Michaels now, Michelle, and there he goes. And at 16 minutes past 10 o'clock, we are now ready to resume